Okay, now today, this last week of this course on the development of sociology in Turkey, I will talk about a person who unfortunately died early, and a person who contributed to development of sociology and philosophy in Turkey. I'm talking about Ulus Baker. I will talk about Ulus Baker. Ulus Baker was my student, like you are in second year, third year, fourth year sociology. And then also he was my student in the graduate school. He did his Master of Science degree with Ünal Nalbantoğlu. I will go into it and try to summarize it. And he did his PhD thesis with me. I was his advisor. Actually, he started with Ünal Nalbantoğlu, but Ünal Nalbantoğlu was having difficulty to make Ulus finish his thesis, so he left him. Then I assumed his advisorship because I wanted him to have his PhD. He deserved more than a PhD. You know, Ulus during undergraduate years or graduate years, you know, he was such a thinker. He was a thinker, thinking and criticizing and bringing some new approaches. Now, I will go into that. So I assumed his PhD thesis advisorship. But I also had difficulties in having him finish it. I was asking, okay, the chapters. So he started sending chapters, and so it became 1,000 pages. And then I started saying, Ulus, now reduce this to 300, 350 something. And he wrote new chapters instead of reducing. So we were struggling like this. I called Ünal Nalbantoğlu's help, and thanks to him, he was able to work with him again and make him throw many of the paragraphs and some chapters. So it came down to a PhD thesis. Okay, now, first, I had to talk about two thinkers, two philosophers that Ulus Baker builds his thinking. Of course, there are many others. You know, he knew Western philosophy and sociology, you know, from every aspect, every one of them, including those sociologists who are outside of mainstream sociology in the world, like Gabriel Tarde, for example. You know, for example, he compares Gabriel Tarde and Emile Durkheim, and he sides with Gabriel Tarde. He thinks that Gabriel Tarde's approach captures society, modern society, better than Durkheim's. You know, they are contemporaries. Anyway, I will come back to that. But the two thinkers that I will talk are one is a 16th century thinker, Spinoza. The other one is a 20th century thinker, Deleuze. Now, of course, I will not go into details of the philosophers, but you know, Ulus, I think, met Deleuze when he was in France. Actually, Ulus Baker is son of the ambassadress of Cyprus to Soviet Union, and he was born there in 1946, and he died in 2007. So just no, not 46, 60, 1960. So he died when he was 47 years old. So born in 1960 in Russia, and he knew Russian. And then they moved to France. He knew French very well. But during his secondary school education, he learned also Greek and Latin and English. Now, when he's talking about Deleuze, he also goes into how Deleuze is talking about Spinoza. So actually, he translated lectures of Deleuze into Turkish. Deleuze's lectures on Spinoza, 11 lectures, it's available in the bookshops, and it is read by many people. Okay, now, Spinoza is important because together with René Descartes, whom from his cogito, I think, therefore I am. I think, and therefore I exist. I am. And how he develops a methodology for contemporary sciences, starting from physics, of course, mathematics, and others. Now, Spinoza is more in the same century, 17th century, is more social science, founder of modern social sciences. Of course, after Machiavelli and Hobbes and Locke and the English philosophers and political economists did not were just emerging, but Spinoza is before them. Political economy is 18th century, whereas Spinoza is 17th century. Now, from your courses on sociological theory from Foucault, you remember that the 17th century is the classical age. At the end of 17th century, through 18th century, foundations of modern societies, modern sciences, modern technology, and starting the middle of 18th century, industrial revolution, all these developments. Now, okay, I'm sorry. Now I have to come back. Spinoza, as I said that Spinoza, he has these two famous books. One is Tractatus Theologicus Politicus. Now, it is a study on political theology or interpretation of scriptures, Jewish and Christian scriptures, and a modern way of reading and interpreting them. And second book is on ethics on a science on morality. So the first one is more on religion. The second one is more on morality. But at that time, the birth of social sciences, if we think of the birth of political science, sociology, psychology, yeah, they were they emerged actually with criticism of theological approach and building actually an ethics which is independent of religion, and that is what Spinoza did, it seems. That's why all thinkers, later thinkers, Leibniz is also a contemporary, and the other ones, they refer to it, they go back to it. For example, also you have seen Althusser, for example. Althusser also goes back to Spinoza. But now let me just share with you this Tractatus Theologicus Politicus, and just have an idea, what is it talking about, and then I will briefly go into Deleuze, Gilles Deleuze, and then I will come to Ulus MA thesis, then PhD thesis, and his other contributions. Okay, now I am sharing Tractatus. Here it is. Now I think it's in front of you now. As you can see, Tractatus Theologico Politicus. And if we come to the contents, you will see. Okay, now I am starting with this because his MA thesis, the first chapters, is a summary of this book. Actually, this chapter, for example, the preface of Spinoza's preface, origin and consequence of superstition, causes that have led the author to write. Yeah, why did he write this philosophy of religion, sociology of religion, or epistemology, ontology? Actually, he explains this there, and then how the readers should read it, how it is designed. Now, the first chapter is of prophecy. He starts with definition of prophecy, a distinction between revelation to Moses and to other prophets, Moses and other prophets. And then he goes into Christ and all other recipients of revelation. And then he goes into a criticism of the concept of spirit. And then he goes different perceptions, understandings of God, the concept of God. And then he goes into different senses of spirit of God. And then he goes the relationship between revelation and imagination. Prophets perceived revelation by imagination. The second chapter, then he goes, the chapter is titled Of Prophets, on prophets. So here he distinguished that what prophecy prophets teach is about religion, about the sacred scriptures. They don't claim to be a scientist. No, they are not scientists. They are prophets. So they don't give knowledge of the phenomenon. And he thinks that thinking that prophets give knowledge is a mistake. So he says that one of the sub-chapters, a mistake to suppose that prophecy can give knowledge of phenomena. No, that's a mistake. No, prophecy gives sacred scriptures. Certainty of prophecy based on vividness of imagination, a sign, goodness of the prophet. So he goes into how revelation and imagination related. Actually, he started talking about that in the previous chapter, and then he continues, he elaborates further, and then he goes into variations of prophecy with the temperament and opinions of the individual. So how different prophets had different individuality, temperaments. And then he goes into Hebrew religion and how the Hebrew, the Jews, the Moses, he goes all into details, which I will not go. And then next chapter, chapter 4, is on divine law. Laws either depend on natural necessity or on human decree. The existence of later not inconsistent with the former class of laws. So necessity, natural necessity, and the second one, human decree, should be in accord. They should be cannot be divine law, a kind of law founded on human decree, called divine from its object. And then he goes into discussion of divine law being universal, independent of truth of any historical narrative, independent of rites and ceremonies of the age, and its own reward. And I will not go into details, but as you can see, he really goes into details of the history of Jewish religion and Christian religion. And then in chapter 7, he comes a kind of philosophical, sociological issue, how to interpret scriptures. And he criticizes current systems of interpretations are erroneous. He starts with that. Only true system to interpret it by itself, how scriptures should be interpreted. And there, for example, he goes to a Jewish philosopher, Maimonides. Maimonides and Ibn Rushd, they are one Islamic, the other Jewish, two philosophers in the Islamic state and society in Spain, in Cordoba. So he goes into Maimonides' understanding, and he criticizes him. And then he goes into other details, really. If you are interested in this kind of historical, philosophical, historical, sociological analysis of Jewish and Christian religion, so both Ulus and Deleuze, goes back to this book and to the second book, to the ethics, while they are building their own approach. Now, let me send this away. And let me come to Gilles Deleuze. Now, Deleuze lived between 1925 and 1995. I will not go into details, but he was a very productive philosopher. Especially, he started writing together with Guattari, a psychiatrist, Guattari, Deleuze and Guattari. I will not go into that, but I will just share with you Deleuze's lecture on Spinoza, and how Spinoza's terminology is misunderstood. Now, let me share this page. Okay, this one. Now, lectures by Gilles Deleuze, and this is on Spinoza, as hopefully, as you see. Yes, you do. Now, let's make it a little bit larger so that you will be okay. Now, I think this is better. There is a picture of him here. And he says that Spinoza's two terms, effectio and effectus, are mistranslated, or they are translated with the same word in English, with affection. Now, let me read from here, from his lecture. In Spinoza's principal book, which is called The Ethics, and which is written in Latin, one finds two words, affectio and affectus. Some translators, quite strangely, translate both in the same way, affectio and affectus. This is a disaster. This is wrong, he says. They translate both terms, affectio and affectus, by affection. I call this a disaster because a philosopher employs two words. It is because, in principle, he has reason, especially when French easily gives us two words which correspond rigorously to effectio and effectus. This is so there should be two separate words, and there are those two words in French and in English. This is affection for effectio, affect for effectus. Now, some translate affectio as affection and effectus as feeling, affection and feeling. Now, this is, affectio is affection and effectus as feeling, which is better than translating both by the same word. But I don't see the necessity of having recourse to the word feeling, since the French offers the word affect. Thus, when I use the word affect, it refers to Spinoza's affectus. When I say the word affection, it refers to affectio. So now, what is when he uses affect, feeling, actually, duygu, it is in Latin Spinoza's affectus. But when he says duygulanma, affection, then it is affection. So it is affectio. Affectio is affection, whereas affect is affectus. And then he goes into what is an idea. What must an idea be in order for us to comprehend Spinoza's simplest propositions? Spinoza is not already, he is going to take the word idea in the sense in which everyone has always taken it. What is called an idea in the sense in which everyone has always taken it in the history of philosophy as a mode of thought which represents something, and a representational mode of thought, an idea referring to things, to objects. For example, the idea of a triangle is the mode of thought which represents the triangle. But then Deleuze goes into elaborates that thinking. Thinking is not, or Spinoza does not restrict thinking to idea, this representational mode of referring to the objects, things, but affect, feelings. So here he says the idea is a mode of thought defined by its representational character. But this gives us a first point of departure distinguishing idea from affect, from affectus, affect, duygu, idea and affect, because we call affect any mode of thought. Affect is also thought according to Spinoza and Deleuze, a mode of thought which doesn't represent anything. Whereas idea represent something outside in the world. Whereas affect, affective thinking, does not refer, does not represent a thing, an object outside. And then he asks, what does that mean? Take a random, what anybody will call affect or feeling, hope, for example, hope, umut etmek, or pain, or love, acı, aşk. This is not, they are not representational. There is an idea of the loved thing, loved person. A hope, for example, a pain, a love, they are not representational. To be sure, There's an idea of something hoped for. But hope as such, or love as such, represents nothing, strictly nothing. Every mode of thought, insofar as it is non-representational, will be termed affect. So affect and idea. Usually, thinking, people think only refers to ideas. But Spinoza and Deleuze include also affective thinking. Affect, feeling is also a way of thinking. So here he says, this is from his lecture. Now, he thereby immediately refers to a primacy of idea over the affect, and this is common to the whole 17th century. So we have not yet entered into what is specific to Spinoza. There is a primacy of the idea over the affect for the very simple reason that in order to love, it is necessary to have an idea, however confused it may be, however indeterminate it may be, of what is loved. In order to will, to want something, it's necessary to have an idea, however confused or indeterminate it may. Even when one says, I don't know what I feel, there's a representation, confused though it may be. There's a huge primacy, which is chronological and logical at the same time, of the idea over affect, which is to say a primacy of representational modes of thought over non-representational modes of thought. And he continues actually. Now, and then he goes in a second point, less superficial way of presenting idea-affect relation, says Deleuze in this lecture. You will recall that we started from the very simple characteristic of the idea. The idea is a thought insofar as it is representational, a mode of thought insofar as it is representational. And in this sense, we'll speak of objective reality of an idea. Yet, an idea not only has an objective reality, but following the Hollow term, it also has a formal reality. Formal reality, the idea itself. What is formal reality of an idea? Once we say that the objective reality is reality of the idea, insofar as it represents something, the formal reality of idea, shall we say, is, but then one below, it becomes much more complicated and much more interesting. The reality of idea insofar as it is itself now something. And then from here goes objectivity of reality of idea of a triangle is the idea of triangle insofar as it presents. I mean, this continues. I don't really want into, and this is really very interesting lectures actually, a series of lectures. Now, let me send this away. And now I will go to Ulus Baker and Ulus Baker's first, his MA thesis. Now, in the MA thesis, Ulus Baker goes into sociology of religion, in a kind of sociology of religion. Now, the title is Peace Discourse in Political Language. Peace, the subtitle, Peace, Discourse, and Opinion in Islam. So, this is a thesis on from the end of 1960s to 90s. The thesis is written is defended in 1993. So up to 1992, how an Islamic discourse emerged. An Islamic discourse together with secular discourses, nationalistic discourses, socialistic discourses, and Islamistic discourses. Now, in this thesis, Ulus advances the thesis that although, of course, there is the beginning of Islamism during 19th century, for example, in the Ottoman times, in 1904, there is this famous article, three political ideas, Ottomanism, Islamism, and Turkism. So nationalism, supranationalism, Ottomanism at that time, and what did they say? Turkism, Ottomanism, and Islamism. So the three currents are captured, and then 1908 Young Turk Revolution, and then the occupation of Ottoman lands, defeat of Ottoman Empire in 1918, and occupation of Ottoman lands, and start of national liberation movement, as you know, from under Atatürk's leadership, from Samsun to Ankara to Izmir, you know, and then establishment of a secular republic, and caliphate is abolished, sultanate is abolished, and all religious tarikats are closed. The founders of the republic thought that these orders were not anymore functioning according to their purposes, whatever. So all these orders, Islamist movement, went underground. So it continued to develop and emerged after 1960 coup d'etat. 1960 coup d'etat brought a new constitution to Turkey, which allowed the emergence of socialism parallel to Atatürkism, Kemalism, and emergence of Islamism. So Islamism, socialism, Turkism, nationalism, and Kemalism. So during 1960s, all these four political ideologies, political currents emerged and started competing with each other. And towards Ulus goes into details of this. Now, let me, this becomes too abstract. Let me go into, let me share the content of this thesis. Again, let me go here. Let me open this. Now, let me see whether you see it or not. Okay, now the title of MA thesis is, as I said, peace discourse and political language. Now, let me, and then PhD thesis is from opinions to images towards a sociology of affects. Now, I came here, let me actually, I wanted to share the thesis itself. Now, let me send this away here, and then let me look at again here, this one. Now I have to share this one. As you can see, this is the thesis in Higher Education Council library, and it is in circulation. So I found it from there. As you can see, when this thesis was submitted, I was the chairperson of the Department of Sociology, and Ünal Nalbantoğlu was his supervisor. And myself, Ünal, and Elizabeth Özdalga was three of us were examining committee, the jury. Now, briefly, as I already summarized, but from his own words, the abstract. Now, what he says. He says this study is an attempt to reproduce a mapping of the Islamic movements in Turkey, a mapping. Now, the idea of mapping, placing it in terms of space and time, a map, which is a map not only a geographical but also temporal, time perspective, striving to adapt to the modern apparatus of opinion about the economy in economic field, domain, political field, and media, the press and television. Now, the peace discourse. Now this is in Turkish, huzur söylemi, huzur. Huzur İslam'dadır. You know, in 1970s, from the end of 1960s to 70s, 80s, the Islamist movement adopted this peace. Huzur is in Islam. Peace is in Islam. The peace discourse is particularly referred in order to reconstitute the role of legitimation possesses in the opinion society, to which the political Islam today tries to adapt itself. So, from Ulus Baker's point of view, and he brings this actually from Spinoza through Deleuze, the modern society is a society of opinions and individualized opinion expressions, individualized as well as movement, collective. So he says that in Turkey, Islamist movement adopted Islam into modern Turkish society's structures, economic, political, and communicative structures, and of course also believers in Islam also adopted themselves. So the Islam, in terms of it is practices, as well as in terms of belief, in terms of piousness, piety. Okay. Now, within this scope, the theoretical issues that emanate from taking language as a grid of analysis are discussed. Now, here, this is important. I said that Ulus focuses on Spinoza and Deleuze, but no, that's a mistake because he adds linguistics. Now, structural linguistics of Saussure and or structuralist anthropology of Levi-Strauss, but a criticism of structural linguistics. For example, Bakhtin, the Russian, one of the Russian linguistics, which goes beyond structuralism. Okay, now, and also the pragmatics, pragmatics of language, how through language things happen. When the mayor's representative declares that I now declare you to be married. Now, from that moment on, and then they sign, the couple signs, and the witnesses also sign. That declaration is it makes a socially real institution emerges. A married couple, a family emerges. Now, which is not just reflecting, like the concept of idea, reflecting things, but there is also non-representational aspects of language, which especially after structuralist linguistics and pragmatics and others, those aspects are being developed. Okay, now, lastly, taking language as a grid of analysis. So this development in linguistics and new understanding of language, and how that will help the interpretation of Islamic discourses in contrast to nationalist or secularist or socialist or Kemalist discourses. How they are they become discursive parts of a larger discourse. Now, Islam's hesitant adaptation to modern opinion and the tension here is important, between its religious status and opinion-making activity. You see, there is a tension. Now, it is a religion, so it is in the religious sphere. But when you start talking in the political sphere, in the ideological sphere, in the opinion sphere, opinion making, opinion production, it becomes another discourse, as the nationalist discourse or Kemalist discourse or socialist discourse. But religion, non-political belief of the believer, of the piety, there's a tension here, because the religion, the scripture, the Quranic scripture, 1,500 years of history, and it was a pre-modern development, this 1,500. Now it has to be adapted to a modern context, a modern context. And Busbacher calls this the context of opinion making, opinion production, discourse production, in the competition with other ideologies. And it enters into that arena. If we talk in Bourdieuian way, there's a field, political field, and in the political field, there are all these discourses, and there are political parties, the leaders of political parties, actors, and they are competing for in the elections for power with their own, each of their own programs to come to power and implement each of them their vision of an economic structure, a juridical structure, a political structure, etc. So there is a tension between this way and the pre-modern way of Islamic believing and Islamic practices, both in terms of practices and in terms of believing. And in Islam, this is iman and amel practices, iman, belief, how this iman and practices should be brought from pre-modern to the modern era. And there's a tension here. Now, tension between its religious status and opinion-making activity. Opinion here refers to the specific socializing activity, and this is the socializing activity, being part of society, so activity that produces identity. At that time, Islamic identity versus nationalist identity, Kemalist identity, socialist identity, political identities, and being with this construction of these identities, being part of that societal framework, social framework, produces identity and inserts the individual subject and collective subjects into life, into social life, political life, economic life. The main thesis of this study is to reveal some preliminary theoretical frameworks in the study of narratives, of the public opinion and communications. So when you look at keywords, for example, as you can see that Islam, Islamist movements, language, narrative, Spinoza, hermeneutics, exegesis, interpretation, exegesis of scriptures, homily, peace, rhetorics, religion, superstition. These are keywords. So there is also a Turkish version. And then really, as I discussed Spinoza's sociology of religion, Tractatus Theologico-Politicus, is summarized here. Rhetoric of God, language of God, the biblical hermeneutics, And then linguistics, adventures of structural linguistics, how langue and parole are distinguished, the politics of language. Really, he goes there into linguistics, historical linguistics. And then in chapter, now this is already after introduction to the first chapter, second chapter, and third chapter is a picture of Islam in Turkey. So Islam in the middle of political struggle, changing attitude of state, as I said, after 1960 constitution, pluralism. Although in 1950, change of power, multi-party system, there is this multi-party proliferation, but still there was a two-party system at that time, Republican People's Party and Democratic Party. But with 1960 coup d'etat and a new constitution, that two-party system ended, and a pluralization and proliferation of ideologies and parties. Multi-party system actually emerged in Turkey after 1960 coup d'etat. For example, then in 1969, National Order Party, Milli Nizam Partisi, first religiously oriented party was established. It is consequence of 1960 coup d'etat, and also establishment of Turkish Labour Party earlier in 1965, and Labour Party, a socialist party, entering into the parliament, for example. These are the consequences of 1960 coup d'etat and the constitution that is made after it. So he goes into a short historical sketch of Islamic fundamentalism and political press and Islam, and then he goes into the emergence of turban affair in students entering into university, but now actually, this is then we come to 1980 coup d'etat, and after 1980 coup d'etat, actually, I will say that the founding of Justice and Development Party is the result of 1980 coup d'etat and the constitution adopted, and the following developments, like the emergence of instead of after the coup d'etat domination, how outside of general's vision, Özal emerged. First as a party of liberal, Islamist, social democratic, conservative, all those pluralistic parties during 60s and 70s, now in one party. And then in 1989, the Anavatan party losing power, and again a proliferation during 1990s, a series of Islamist parties being founded and closed. Of course, 1980 coup d'etat closed all parties, all unions, all political civil society organizations. You know, it closed, and 1980 coup d'etat tried actually repressed both left and right in such a way that the emerging pluralistic scene became weak in terms of the leftist socialistic representation, and the conservative, nationalistic, and Islamist wing gradually became stronger and stronger, and reaching to the coming to power of Justice and Development Party, and their being in power continuing for 21 years plus now after the last elections, maybe 26 years. Okay, now anyway, this is 19. We are in 1980s and 19. You know, the thesis is written in 1993, defended in 1993. So actually, in this thesis, Ulus is trying to see the future, you know, in that present, in 1980s and 1990, 91, in 1989, the Özal's Anavatan Party in Turkey and Soviet Union in the world collapsing, and developments in the Soviet republics, and a pluralization there, and a similar polarization in Turkey. Okay, now continues. Islam versus secularism, perspectives of westernization, modernization, and then problem of Saint Sophia, Saint Sophia, the structure of Islamist movement in Turkey, and then he goes into re-emergence of tarikats, Nakşibandi, Nurcism, Cemalettin Kaplan, Vakf of Islamic Values, Islam against capitalism or Islam as capitalism, finance or organization, Islamist parties, and how the conversion of conversion from the rightist, extreme rightist movements to Islamism. Islamism separating itself from nationalist and liberal and conservative rightist movements. Islamism actually in between socialism and conservatism and liberalism, keeping distance, but eventually after maybe during recent decades, that separation collapsed, and Islamist and other nationalist and conservative parties came together again. But first, they separated until 2002. Okay. Islam and the Islamic organizations in the Middle East, Islamic state apparatus. And then he goes into discourse of Islam, peace discourse, huzur söylemi, peace discourse. And then he goes into first theory of opinion society, and religious opinion, semiotic system of the new order, Özal's vision, and then symbolic structures of archaism and capitalism beyond use value and exchange value, and the image of technology, how the new discourses approached the image of technology, technique, and then how in opinion society identities are formed, all these identities, constitution of identity, formation of identity, introducing the concept of masses and negation of identity, and tri-functionality of political space, chaotic identity, and then conclusion. If you are really interested, you can go into this. As I said, you can acquire it from Higher Education Council's library, and PDF is circulating. Now, I would like to go into his PhD thesis. Actually, this MA thesis is translated into Turkish, and it is published in Turkish, and it's available. I don't have it, but it's available. Now, the second one, let me share the PhD thesis, which is about, again, opinions. But here, Ulus goes into defending of a new approach in sociology. Now, he is criticizing the existing sociological practices, which he thinks are reduced to the opinion of opinions, at the opinion level, instead of knowledge, social scientific knowledge level, and opinion of opinions level. These are two levels, and he's proposing a way how sociology can be developed into understanding not only ideas, one's ideas, opinions, individualized or movement type of opinions, how social types, and how both opinions, feelings, affections, and effects. Okay, remember from Deleuze, and how he separated Spinoza's affectus and affectio, affection and affect, and affective thinking, and representational thinking, and so a fuller sociological approach should also capture the affects, the emotions. So he's proposing that sociology of opinions and sociology of feelings, sociology of affects, and a sociology of affects should be developed, and which will comprehend social life better than sociology of opinions approach. Okay, now let me share this with you. Again, let me go here. Now, this is the PhD thesis. And as I said, from opinions to images towards a sociology of affects. And this is in 2002. The previous one was, his MA thesis was in 1993. Now, here, I brought the abstract of the thesis here. Now, he says that this thesis, I summarized this, but I would like to read his abstract, is intending to show the possibility of a marriage between social sciences and documentary filmmaking, which can only be possible through the critique of what we may call sociology of opinions. Sociology of opinions, not only restrained in mainstream practice of social research, but also expanding into the textual-interpretative dimensions of human sciences, creating a major epistemological problem. A major epistemological problem, sociology tending to become a doxology. Instead of being sociology, a logy of social science of socius, it is becoming an opinion of opinions. Doxology, doxa in Greek philosophy is opinion of putting opinion while people come together, while they are discussing, etc. Okay, now in the title it says that sociology of affects, sociology of feelings. Now, sociology of feelings, Ulus thinks, will be possible by marriage of video making, documentary filmmaking. Now, so he's proposing that filmmaking should be used as a part of sociological research, sociological field research, and the other dimensions of social sciences, of course. But he's talking about a marriage of social sciences and documentary filmmaking in order to establish a new, a fuller sociology, a sociology which goes beyond opinion of opinions. In Turkish, kanaatlerin kanaati, kanaatler sosyolojisi. So the Turkish version, this is translated, kanaatlerden imajlara, duygu sosyolojisine doğru bir gelişim gibi bir şey. Yani Türkçesi kanaatlerden imajlara. Çünkü because filmmaking is images, whereas images and effects, whereas ideas and opinions and ideas, affects and images. So both ideas and images will be brought, and feelings, affects will be brought together in this new sociological approach. There is also another aspect of such a marriage of social sciences and documentary filmmaking, notably the power of audiovisual media. Audiovisual media. The videos are both visual, you see, as well as you hear. Audiovisual media in the life experience of modernity, creating a need for a theoretical discussion which is lacking in the actual theories of the film. So he's contributing both to sociology and also to communication studies, film studies, communication faculties. We are thus inclined to show critically what we may call as the decline of social types in the parallel evolution of social sciences and of cinema. In both cinema, mass cinema, but not documentary filmmaking, and opinion type of social science. In both of them, there is a loss that 19th century social sciences captured social types. He gives examples of Marx's the capitalist and the worker, the proletariat, or Zimmel's, George Zimmel's, the foreigner, the friend, or the miser, or his social types. How social science, sociology at that time was richer, and also in the first emergence of early 20th century, filmmaking was also more documentary, whereas with the development of Hollywood cinema, it became more and more mass entertainment. Now he is trying to bring back that mass entertainment type of cinema and opinions type of sociology into a marriage, which will give rise to a better approach to understanding society. He says we are trying to define the possible marriage between social and documentary as a tentative sociology of affects, sociology of feelings. Sociology of affects requires the early Tardean critique against Durkheim, Gabriel Tarde, Emile Durkheim debate, actually, and his followers, Gabriel Tarde's followers and Durkheim's followers, requires sociology of affects requires the early Tardean critique of Durkheimian and Durkheim's followers type of sociology, the positivistic, functionalistic sociology, and also a critique of textual epistemology inherent in the sociology of opinions, in sociology of opinion, and it requires an exposition of the Spinozist doctrine of affects against psychoanalysis. So it also requires a criticism of psychoanalysis. Now, he continues, we define social types as part of the wealth of sociological imagination. C. Wright Mills, sociological imagination, which is something in itself, but rather for the domain of life experience to which it is devoted. Documentary filmmakers who have been aware of the power of the medium, the documentary film they use, have already developed a rather naive ethics in their own domain, in this documentary film domain, video domain. There's a video production. This is what is lacking in the practice of social sciences. To avoid the naive documentary approach, however, we need nothing more than theoretical vigilance, which can be present in social sciences. We find the ultimate possibility of establishing such a visual, audio-visual, textual sociology of effects in the Vertovian praxis of kino-eye. This is a concept of the camera as kino-eye. Vertov is a theorist of film, of this visual, audio-visual, textual documentary filmmaking. The Vertovian praxis of the kino-eye, and in the actual video philosophy of Jean-Lac Godard, who intends to reshape videography, that domain, video making domain, as a thinking machine, and this thinking machine, Godard and Deleuze, Deleuze and Guattari here. So keywords: public opinion, epistemology, social research, social types, affects, opinion, documentary film, cinema, psychoanalysis, kino-eye, kino-pravda, video philosophy. Really, it refers to various fields and domains. So after an introduction, he goes into this question: what is opinion? What is opinion? And he starts with Pascal. Pascal's bed about consequences of believing in God's existence and not believing. What are the consequences? And Pascal believes that believing in God is more advantageous. Okay, then he goes this opinion problematic. He goes then opinion in psychology, and then he goes into point of view. What is a point of view? A perspective, actually. Now, I think in the second year sociology, history of sociology, if you study phenomenology, Schutz, for example, Schutz has the notion, the concept of perspectives, common sense perspective, religious perspective, scientific perspective, aesthetic, artistic perspective, perspectives. So in a Spinozian and Deleuzian way, Ulus developed the concept of point of view, how to critically see and observe and analyze. And then he goes into juridical institution of the subject, institution of the subject. Again, remember from Althusser, his theory of ideology, how ideology institutes the subject. For example, when the police says, "Hey, you," the person turning towards law, and in the eyes of the law, now he's a responsible subject to the police or to the law enforcer. But he criticizes that in the next section, and then he goes into language, linguistics, and criticism of communication, and then social types and how a sociology affects the friend as a social type, modernity, community, friendship towards a new sociological imagination. Can documentary film work as a laboratory? And Godard's proposition for this using documentaries actually camera, using camera as a research tool. And then the next chapter is totally on affect. And here he compares Spinoza and Freud and psychoanalysis and other post-Freudian psychoanalysts. Not to know of psychoanalysis, ignoramus. Actually, there is an article, a long article by Ulus in Turkish, in Toplum ve Bilim, for those who are interested. I think I also shared it in the Blackboard. So chapter 3 is about the affect, the sociology of affects, but sociology of affects with camera, and camera is the images, image. So, the title from opinions to the images and to the affects. So how affects and images are brought together. Imagination and the power to imagine, the theme of excess, the images of everyday life, modern imagination, ontology of image, metaphysics of life, cinema as an effective model of the world, popular experience of cinematographic image, and then Magritte as a painter, and Foucault. Foucault has a small pamphlet book on "This is not a pipe," the title, and how a painter like Magritte goes beyond that representational thinking and into more complex aspects of perception, understanding, interpretation, and being in the society, in the community, in the social relationships, being relationally existing in a social milieu. And then he goes into whether film is from Edison-Dixon line versus Lumiere, the invention of filmmaking, the origin or the emergence. And then it goes into Yılmaz Güney cinema, and he thinks it's closer to a documentary type Yılmaz Güney films. The logic of documentary, the concept of pathos, cinema and effects again. As you can see, okay, montage, bricolage, invention. How actually Gilles Deleuze has this lecture to filmmakers, and there he asks, what is creative thinking in philosophy or in arts or in science, in his book, in his and Guattari together, they wrote one of their last books, What is Philosophy? And there, in that book, they talk about philosophy as creation of concepts, science as catching the chaotic existence, catching the order or dynamic order through variables and functions, science, and art, again capturing the infinite existences of social, so many events, capturing through images three different ways of creating knowledge of, feeling of, concept of a reality which is fluid, which is changing. Anyway, this is not a lecture on Deleuze. Actually, in one of his last writings on immanence, he describes this capturing the immanence and transcendence, how transcendence goes through immanence and capturing the chaos at the plane of immanence, and how that is so joyful. Anyway, now Ulus also, like Deleuze, talks about the modern society. Actually, many aspects of a modern society is a montage, is bringing together, putting together various elements into an assemblage, a film, for example, or into an assemblage, a book, for example, into an assemblage, a newspaper, for example, into an assemblage, a car, for example, into an assemblage, a tractor. But here, so in the Ulus and Deleuze's approach to society is not through Hegelian idea of the whole, or for example, the idea of system in Parsons or Habermas, for example, but opposing a whole, the parts of which are brought together in such a way that there is no autonomy to the elements, to the part. Whereas assemblage is a montage. It is not fusing the parts together. The parts come together, but preserve a relative autonomy. Okay. And then he goes into Vertov, glass, eye, and implications for the documentary. So, you can, okay, now, I will send this away, and where you can read this now. One, again, you can find the PhD thesis. But from this PhD thesis, recently, two of friends of Ulus published a book in English last year. Now let me share that book with you. Now it is this one here. Okay, Aras Özgün and Andreas Freske. The title of the thesis, actually, PhD thesis, From Opinions to Images, Essays Towards a Sociology of Affects. Now, this is, of course, they, it is not the exact form of the PhD thesis. They edited it as editors, Aras Özgün and Andreas Treske, and published in the Institute of Network Cultures. It is available, actually. You can download this book and you can go into it. So as already we have seen some chapters of the thesis, a sociology of affects, what is an opinion, what is an affect, what's an image, and towards a neo-Vertovian sensibility of affects. And then they have a chapter on cinema and Ulus Baker. As I said, you can download this book and read, if really you're interested. Now, already time is passing. I will not go into further detail. Of course, in between this MA thesis and PhD thesis, Ulus Baker wrote so many articles. And especially after the PhD thesis, so many books before he died. So actually, and Ulus Baker's people started listening to the videos, attending the seminars, reading the articles and the books, and organizing conferences on Ulus Baker's themes, philosophical and sociological themes. Philosophers and sociologists all together. Now, I would like to share a few videos. Now, he's defending the video as a powerful tool to capture images and feelings. Now, first, let me share this launching of this book, his PhD thesis in Europe in English. Now, again, let me go here. Let me go to this again and go back here. Okay, it is now this, which one? Now, okay. Now, what is it? Sciences. Not this one. Okay, this one. Now, how?
Okay, I will start if everything is okay. Okay.
Yes. People came together.
Okay,
and
welcome everybody.
announcing.
And it's a great pleasure to be with you folks on Zoom, and also those who are watching us through the YouTube. Welcome to the Ulus Baker book launch event. First of all, thanks to Andreas and Aras for their book in the memory of Ulus Baker. And also special thanks to all who contributed to the organization of this event. Let me introduce myself. I'm Professor Kürşat Çağatay. I'm a faculty member at the Middle East Technical University. I'm the current director of Matthews Audiovisual Systems Production and Research Center. In short, we call it as GISAM, which was the home of Ulus Baker for a long time. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to personally meet Ulus Baker. However, his legend is always with us under this roof, under the roof of GISAM. And GISAM is always, and Matthew is always proud to have such a distinguished philosopher and intellectual. And it is so sad. I mean, we lost him at such an early age, but he's still with us with his unique work. And especially in today's intellectually deserted society, he's among us like an oasis. So again, I mean, I don't want to keep my talk long because many people are going to talk. But my special, again, I mean, go to Aras and Andreas, which they are GISAM's former members. I also would like to thank.
Okay, I will not give the whole video, but here you can see Aras Özgün with this curly hair, one of the Ulus Baker's friends and editor of the book, and Andreas Treske, two of them. But Thomas also was very much working together with Ulus in GISAM and others. And there are people here. If you are interested, you know, it is something like 1.5 hour video talking about this documentary filmmaking, research, this sociology of affects. I think it's a useful video. Let me send this away and let me make you face to face with Ulus here. A 50-minute.
We have lived at least 1 century within the idea of opinion, which determined some of the major themes.
This video is not
sciences.
as he defended.
Sociological review was the American
here.
Man, since he redefined seemingly the notion of opinion, which is quite different from that of the Greeks or medieval era. The main problem for Pascal when he asked opinions, seemingly opinions of people, does God exist, for instance? This was not a philosophical problem. This was a problem of belief and opinion, evidently. But it was not posed, Pascal's question, did God exist, was not posed in the same manner today in television or in social thinking, in polls, in TV panels, etc. Is not the same way of asking the question. What he was interested, what interested Pascal was essentially not the knowledge about the existence of God, nor what people are thinking about this. He was trying to compare the three.
So here, like in the thesis, he's talking about Pascal's bet, you know, about God's existence as but it is not. Pascal is not creating an opinion, but from Pascal's position how an opinion society, how it evolved into opinion society. He talks about that, and the thesis is about that as well. You can listen to it. But that video is not very good. But now this short one, now how he talks, you can see he's much more expressive than in that video. Let me share this one.
Ama bir duygunun ne?
Okay. This is a very short, half a minute video.
Ne olduğunu gerçekten anlamak gerekiyor bu şeyde. Anlamadan da geçmemek gerekiyor. Bir duygu her zaman varoluş gücümüzde bir artış ya da azalıştır ve bundan başka da bir şey değildir.
Evet, as you can see, this is actually a cut from a longer speech from one of his seminars. There's a video here about thinking visually, visual thinking. Actually, this is one of the last conferences before he died. So you can listen to this too. It's something like 2 hours really. But the quality of is not also very good. Now let's
Hitap eden sanatlar. Yani müzik ama daha önemlisi şiir. Sadece dil içerisinden dikkat ederseniz. Ve zaman içerisinde var. Yani zamansal süreç. Bu bir logos felsefesi, yani söz felsefesiyle biliyorsunuz. Özel dedim, Hegel'in terimi. Çünkü sanat eserleri her zaman tek tek gövdelerdir, şeylerdir. Genel olan ise artık felsefedir. Yani felsefe geneli kavramaya yönelik, sadece özel değil. Bunu niye anlattım? Hegel son derslerinden birisinde demiş, sanat tarihi kapandı artık. Tarihi.
So he's talking about philosophy and art. Again, he will go to Spinoza, but here at that moment he was referring to Hegel. If you are interested, you can listen to it. But here, one more thing, he makes a distinction. In Foucault's, he was a very well reader of Foucault as well, like Deleuze. Power and force or the ability, the capacity to actualize something in Turkish as güç, whereas this capacities, abilities taken from agents and given to a ruler, and it becomes power and iktidar ve güç in Turkish, power and force. Now, they are both power, but two levels of power. Now he
Filmde inançla aklın ayrı tutulması diye bir şey var. Spinoza'nın laikliği dolayısıyla felsefi bir laiklik. Politik tercihi de açıkçası demokratik olan bir toplum, yani kolektif yönetim olarak bir toplum, ama bunu öyle şey diye düşünmeyin. Demokrasi ona göre bütün monarşik falan filan biçimlerin arasında en güçlü rejim. En güçlü rejim dediğimizde biz tırsarız. Yani otoriter falan filan, tıkır tıkır makine gibi işleyen falan bir toplum diye düşünürüz, ama Spinoza öyle düşünmüyor. Spinoza'da iktidar ile güç arasında yaptığı bir ayrım var açıkçası. Birincisi iktidar işin aslında bizi güçlerimizden ayrı düşüren, yani bizim gücümüzü azaltan bir mekanizmadır. Bir düzenektir. Buna potestas diyor. Yani bir hükümranlık gücü söz gelimi, ya da bir toplumsal sözleşmeyle o devirde varsayılıyordu böyle şeyler. Hobbes, Locke falan filan tarafından şeye devredilen, bir egemene devredilen yapıp etme gücü bizim elimizden kaçar. Yani toplumun elinden kaçıp gider. Ve bir devlete, bir aygıta diyelim, bir hükümranlık aygıtına bunu kullanma yetkisi verir. İkincisi, bunu kullanabilme yetkisinin ona verilmiş olması onun da kullanabileceği anlamına gelmez. Çünkü gerçek anlamda yapıp etme güçlerimizle, faaliyet güçlerimizle ve kendi özgürlüğümüzü üretebilme, yaratabilme güçlerimizle alakası yoktur açıkçası. O potestas dediğimiz şeyin tümüyle varsayımsaldır. Ve her zaman Spinoza'nın vurgusu o çerçevede gücün ister Tanrı'dan kaynaklandığı varsayılsın iktidar. Söz gelimi biliyorsunuz teokratik sistemlerde ya Tanrı'dan ya doğadan ya bir aileden, bir secereden, bir kraliyet seceresinden falan kaynaklandığı hep söylenir iktidarın ve bununla meşrulaştırılır. Spinoza için bu meşru bir şey değil. Yani. Çünkü gerçek anlamda yapıp etme gücüne tekabül etmiyor. Şimdi gerçek anlamda yapıp etme gücü, faaliyet gösterme gücü ise şöyle bir şey Spinoza açısından. Her varlık kendi varlığını sürdürme konusunda bir çabaya sahip. Bu onun temel arzusudur. Her varlığın temel arzulamak durumunda olduğu şeydir. Dolayısıyla bu çabayı destekleyen her şeyle karşılaşmak bir özgürleşme halidir. Bu çabayı desteklemeyen, köstekleyen ya da bu çabayı insan düzleminde, işte bedensel, tinsel özellikleri, insanın gelişimi düzleminde önleyen güce ise potestas diyor. O zaman şöyle bir şeyle karşılaşıyoruz. Spinoza için bu çabayı destekleyen ve bu çabayı daha yetkin olarak insanların uygulayabilmesine, gerçekleştirebilmesine yarayan bir tür arzu biçimi neyse potentiya agendi, yani eyleme geçme gücü, potansiyeli diyor. Galiba işin sırrı o. güçten anladığı, yani kudretten, insan kudretinden anladığı şey böyle bir.
Evet, this is really very interesting how he's talking about Spinoza actually, but he's also talking about his thinking, as you can see. He's thinking as if he impersonated Spinoza, and he is this, of course, using Spinoza's Latin terminology, how the monarchical domination, or even in Foucauldian terms, disciplinary use of disciplinary power, have or monarchical power, disciplinary power, or biopolitical power. In Foucault, how these and the power of the social, of the individual, of the capacity to make things, being an agent, fail olmak, to actualize things, human societies, human individuals, has this capacity, alone, but mostly together with, socially, and how this agency, ability to act and to make a change in the world. Every action is changing something, producing, putting seeds into the soil and taking care of it, so irrigating, etc., and then having the fruits or vegetables or whatever. You are making a change, or producing a painting or a sculpture, or doing research and writing an article. The capacity, the agent, being an agent to make a change, to produce something. Now, how the socially shared power is taken away, elevated to a central power, or to a disciplinary power, monarchical power, or disciplinary power, or biopolitical power. He didn't use these, but I can translate this separation of güç ve iktidar, two forms of power. In Foucault, three forms of power. In Spinoza, two forms of power. But in Turkish, in English also, force and power. You can use güç as force to make, in physics, work equal, a work, how a production of something, making something, that is güç, whereas domination, administering monarchically, or in a disciplinary way, or in a political, biopolitical way. This is a good expression of this separation in Spinoza and by Ulus. I just wanted you to listen to it. We can continue. He has many as I said, books and articles. They are available everywhere almost. Now let me send this away. So I hope you like this ending this development of sociology course with a young sociologist, philosopher, whom from undergraduate, second year, first year student to up to his PhD, and later I followed him. But let me finish with this. He always asked me to read Spinoza. Now, unfortunately, I had a book on ethics by Spinoza. The book on ethics by Spinoza is like a mathematical book. Propositions, theorems, derivations, etc. It didn't interest me much. I mean, of course, I read it, but I was not excited as much as Ulus or Deleuze. Why? Because I started with ethics. Now, recently I discovered that if I started Spinoza's Sociology of Religion book, Tractatus Theologicus Politicus, Theologia Politicus, I would have enjoyed Spinoza much more than I did reading his book Ethics. Sometimes starting learning about a thinker from this book, not that book, makes that difference. Similarly, I had a similar experience about Deleuze. Ulus was bringing people about cinema, seminars, Gilles Deleuze, but I was more interested in Bourdieu or Habermas or Wallerstein, even for example, this socialist strategy. Anyway, the post Althusserians. I was interested in post Althusserians. I was reading their research, but not Deleuze, because I started reading Deleuze from one of the most difficult books, like Ethics of Spinoza, his Sense and Sensibility, which is also almost a mathematical book with derivations. And now, of course, I read his other books, but for example, is the 1,000 plateaus, reading 1,000 plateaus, or together with Guattari, or reading what is philosophy, or reading and clinic excites me, but only during the recent decade I started, last 1 or 2 decades, I started reading these. Now I wish I studied both Spinoza and Deleuze earlier, when I was working together with Ulus, and we could have produced perhaps together, he more theoretical, me more field research. That's why I am more Bourdieusian. Bourdieu is a sociologist that combines both theory and research, and I tried to do the same. And maybe I could have brought Ulus to do field research, and perhaps I will to do more theory, because doing theory is during last 1.5 decades. I started teaching on theory. Now, previous my 35 years is mostly field research and findings and concepts that come from the field research. To develop that into a theory is a difficult thing, because developing theory is not something that comes out of blue sky. Theory is developed only by by transforming previously existing theories. We have seen throughout this semester, sociologists, from my point of view, Deleuze-Guattari or Mardin, yes, Hilmi Ziya Ülken, Etika, yes, thank you, Nilüfer. We have seen these. The question is this: to what extent we sociologists, we are able to create a ground where theory and field research are brought together, and both the marriage of the two gives rise to new theories and new research, like in France or in England or in America or in other countries. This is one of the questions, I'm sure, in your mind throughout this semester, and it's a question throughout my life. Usually students like you ask, why don't we have a Gilles Deleuze or a Foucault or a Habermas or all those theorists that you discuss, we discussed in the first semester, contemporary sociological theorists. But each of them has a history. Out of a history emerges by their transformation, by their continuity and breaks, new theories emerge. Unfortunately, in the Islamic world, there is a beginning, Ibn Khaldun, and the followers are historians, Ottoman historians. They write various studies, Risale, Koçu Bey, for example. But Naima or others, Katip Çelebi, but it didn't develop into a full theory research togetherness and its dissemination, sharing in the society as a whole and with the other societies. You know, those theorists, contemporary theorists or classical theorists are fortunate because what they have written is being shared by the rest of the world, because the change, transformation, industrialization, urbanization, natural sciences and social sciences developed in Europe together with Enlightenment, modernity, development of capitalism. Although all these have its beginnings in Middle East, in China, in India, but their modern development is in France or in Germany, in England, later in the United States, etc., etc. And Ottoman Empire, again, as we discussed in our course, social structure of Turkey, is peripheralized. In a world system, if we think of it in the world system perspective, and as Sherif Mardin, for example, talks, okay, during 18th century, 19th century, there were young Ottomans and then young Turks, but they didn't develop theories for the rest of the world. Now, Ziya Gökalp, as you remember, for example, there are some articles who says that some of the thinkers like Ziya Gökalp or the journal Kadro, and of course recently more and more of them, you know all their names, you know, a sociology which is different from English or British or German position, but being in the third world, sociology from the third, you know, we are experiencing development of capitalism, urbanization, industrialization, through integration to a world system dominated by Western capitalist countries. So the historical, cultural, social transformations as they go parallel to this integration to the world system and coming of transformation of economic structures, state structures, political structures. So development of sociology in Turkey is in this aspect. And, you know, if you remember at the beginning, I compared this with the Indian or with the Japanese or with some Latin American countries, you know, how social sciences, sociology developed there. For example, from Latin America, dependency theory emerged. For Latin American countries, you know, plural, they all speaking Spanish. Now, you know, countries speaking Turkish, you know, only recently now, during last 30 years, you know, Central Asian Turkish-speaking countries and Turkey start interacting. But if, you know, this was there, you know, for 150 years, like in Latin America, you know, all speaking Spanish, now all speaking Turkish in this larger geography, space and time perspective, there would have been maybe theories written in Turkish and spread to the rest of the world. Anyway, why I go into this, I don't know, but let me stop here and let me ask you, do you have any questions? Do you have comments? As you know, this is our last hour